Moments with Marianne. I am so delighted we're spending this time here today. Our show coming up is all about wellness and health. So our first guest, Erika Flint, is an award-winning hypnotist, best-selling author, speaker, and the co-host of a popular podcast series on hypnosis, as well as a radio program, Reprogramming Your Health. Erika is the founder of the Cascade Hypnosis Center, and she's here today to talk to us about her new book, Reprogram Your Weight. So let's welcome to the show, Erika.
Marianne, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really excited to tell all your listeners about my book.
You know what? I cannot wait to talk about this, especially because you bring such a great perspective to this discussion.
Yeah, it's completely different than most. Well, first of all, it's the opposite of a diet. So we can start with that. And most people are a little bit interested with that. And the fact that it uses hypnosis. So a lot of people are really curious about, how does hypnosis lead to lasting weight loss? And, there's a lot of things that we can talk about. So I'm excited to hear what you want to start with.
Well, why don't we start with you? Because I think a lot of people, they're always curious. It's like, how did Erika get on this path? How did you even, get to this place where this is like a passion of yours?
Right. Well, I was in software engineering for years, which was awesome. I loved that job. But then I had some personal challenges in my life, and I think a lot of people have had personal challenges. You get to a really low point, and I started asking myself, being like dissatisfied with things in my life and wanting more and wanting to look for more things, and that's when I found hypnosis, and it really provided me with significant self-healing and everything that I felt like I needed and wanted. And from there, I remember sitting there the moment I realized what hypnosis really is doing, and I realized how much it really is a reflection to some extent of what I'd already been doing in programming computers, and how I was able to relate that to what was going on in my own brain and my own heart, and how I was so easily able to translate that for other people to healing them. And so, for me, it was my own path of healing and self-discovery that led me to hypnosis. And that's why I just am so passionate about it now.
Oh, the passion comes across, and because I've been on your website, and I'm all, we're connected on social media, and I just love the passion that you bring to this discussion, because I think it gets really confusing for a lot of people. It seems like, gosh, and we'll get into this a little bit later. I don't want to bring the cart before the horse here, but, it's just like it gets confusing when we talk about the subconscious and conscious mind and, what are these even doing? But before we get into that discussion, why don't we talk about, why use hypnosis to heal emotional eating?
Well, and so this does kind of bring up the conscious and subconscious mind, but this is the way that I like to describe it to people. When you know what you should be doing or want to be doing, and most of my clients who want to lose weight, they know what they should be doing. They know how to eat properly. They know the formula, right? And they've lost weight in the past. They know what they should be doing. But in the moment, they don't feel like it. And that's the problem. So, they can have, they wake up in the morning, they feel good, they put their gym clothes in the car, they pack a healthy lunch, and they have every intention of working out, cooking a healthy dinner, spending a great evening with the family. But by the time the end of the workday is done, or by the time that they are running kids around to appointments or dropping their parents off at appointments or whatever it is, all of the thousands of things that they're trying to do all day, they don't feel like eating that healthy dinner or going to the gym anymore. They just don't. And so they find themselves at the drive-thru, or they find themselves eating ice cream once again, and then people get really frustrated. So they can know what to do, and that's what we consider more of a conscious type of a thinking. Like, in your mind, what you want to do, but you don't follow through on it because you don't feel it. And so when we're talking about the subconscious is more where the feeling state is. And so what hypnosis really does is hypnosis aligns those two things. So now you can know what you want to do, and then in the moment you actually feel like doing it. And the cool thing about this is that we almost always do what we feel. And if we're doing something we don't feel like it, we almost always complain about it. We'll say, well, fine, I'll do that, but I don't feel like it, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and sometimes it can be like, gosh, I'm doing all these things. To stop and cook a healthy meal is just one other thing,
Just one more thing, yep. And so that is a real big part of the reason why my program tends to work really well for people, because one of the key components really is that it has to be easy enough and integrated into your life. So however busy you are, it has to be integrated in your life to the extent that you can do it every single day with minimal effort. If it's too much effort, and this is where most diet programs are pretty regimented, and you have to follow a specific plan, and they'll work for a while, but then people run out of steam, and they don't want to keep following them anymore, and then they just gain the weight back.
Yeah, it's like this vicious cycle.
It is, because then in the end what ends up happening is then they feel deflated, they feel frustrated, and they feel like, hey, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do this? And so they feel even worse than when they did when they started. And so this is why a lot of people, they're just like, I'm not even going to try anymore because I just feel worse in the end.
Yeah, because it could feel like a battle until you get that alignment going.
Right, absolutely. And it does feel like a battle because you're trying to do something that you don't feel like doing. So that's where willpower comes in. Willpower is energy driven. So you can use willpower. You have the will to do it, right? And power, that just basically means you have the energy. So when you're only using willpower, which is a conscious mind thing, and it's an energy driven, so you have to have the physical energy, the physiological energy to do it. By the end of the day, if you've had a stressful day or are too tired, you really don't feel like it anymore. So you give in. You have no willpower left. Your battery is empty.
Now, so you talk about using hypnosis, and you are so good about how you explain this in the book. I'd like for you to share with our listeners a little bit on how they can use that to really talk to their subconscious mind in order to get the changes they're looking to have made.
Yeah, so hypnosis really allows us to tap into subconscious and understand, okay, what's really going on here? So, for example, one of the big issues that I help people resolve is emotional eating. So emotional eating is when you eat when you're not hungry for emotions, right? So there's a lot of times we eat when we're not hungry. Sometimes it's for social reasons. Sometimes it's because the clock says so. Oh, it's 9 a.m. I have to eat, right? But a lot of times, and for a lot of my clients, emotional eating is the issue. So they're eating because they're stressed, and they're eating because they're bored. Those are the two primary emotions that people are suffering from that are driving them to eat. Now, there's other ones too. There's guilt, there's shame, there's anger, there's unfairness. There's all sorts of other feelings that people will turn to food for, but food is really serving as a distractor. So what's happening in the brain, and this is really interesting, what's happening in the brain is the brain is almost getting overloaded. So the nervous system to some degree is getting overloaded with negative feelings, and the brain is kind of like, please give me a break. Give me a break from this stress. I don't want to be so bored. Give me a break from this frustration. And your brain knows that if you just reach for food, it's going to give you that momentary respite from whatever it is that you're thinking about. For a lot of my clients, I ask them, about food, and they'll tell me, the only time I feel good during the day is when I'm eating. That's it. That's the only time they feel good, because the rest of the time they feel bad about themselves. They feel inadequate. They feel lonely. They don't feel good enough. People are making fun of them or pushing them around. And so what hypnosis does is it allows people to understand what that emotion is that's happening and eliminate it. So eliminate that negative feeling. And then that's really powerful. So now they're not feeling inadequate anymore. They're not feeling so stressed anymore. And of course there's some practical things there too. Like if somebody's trying to do 10,000 things every single day, there needs to be some reprioritization that takes place, because we are, human bodies, and there's only so much in a day that we really truly can do. And I tell my clients, you can do anything. You can do everything. You just can't do it all at once, right? You can't do it everything all in the exact same moment, right? So it's like you got to prioritize, right? So what hypnosis really allows us to do, first of all, is pinpoint the source of the emotional turmoil. And then we find the root cause, basically, the root cause for that emotional turmoil, and then we're able to get rid of it. And sometimes it's coming from a place in the past and it's being re-triggered by something currently. Sometimes it is just something that is going on regularly every single day, so some level of kind of ongoing stress, so like a boss that's difficult, or really suffering. There's a lot of things that people are suffering from now. A child who is doing poorly in school, parents who love their kids and the kids are suffering, and parents are going to suffer along with that, right? And that's really hard for people. Or an elderly parent who is going through, the aging process. So some of these things, some of the most hurtful things that we experience are watching a loved one suffer.
Well, and I can see where people would look at something to kind of alleviate that suffering because, it becomes a habit after a while. It's like, okay, I'm just going to do this, get that good feeling like you were saying, like the brain, hey, I'm overwhelmed. The ice cream's making me feel better for this moment. And now I don't have to be in all this stuff.
Exactly right. That's exactly what's happening because there's a part of the brain that just wants to feel better now. Okay, it's like, oh man, I'm just so tired. I just want to feel better now. I don't care about the consequences. And then what happens is later on, after eating all the ice cream or, after eating the bag of chips and being like, that didn't fill that spot. I guess it wasn't chips. It must be, pizza. And then after 800 calories or more of food, people feel guilty, right? Yeah. So then there is this kind of after effect, and I call that guilty residue. Guilty residue left over from I want to feel better now. And you kind of have that knee-jerk reaction, just reach for that food to feel better now. And we know that sugar behaves like a drug in the brain. And so the brain, according to the brain, the sugar and pleasurable type foods like that really do alleviate the sensation of that nervous system overload. So it does give the brain that temporary respite, but it has a long-term consequence. So one of the best things to do is rehabituate yourself to something that feels good but doesn't have a high price tag. So you do something else that's enjoyable. And that's where hypnosis is really helpful to change unhealthy patterns to healthy ones. So that's the second thing we do. We go after this root cause that's kind of causing this emotional turmoil to begin with, and then we help people take unhealthy habits and turn them into healthy ones. And the combination of those two things and integrating it into your life, that every client I work with is very different. So we come up with a different approach for every single one, and then that makes sure that it works for them specifically. Because there's a lot of things going on. You have people who have young kids and they're working part-time. You have people who have retired and they aren't working anymore, so they're not getting that good feeling from working. There's people who are just working way too much. They feel like they're lucky to have the job, but now they're doing twice as much. All sorts of different things, and so we have different solutions. And this is kind of what is in the book, too, is different stories of clients coming from all varieties of backgrounds and situations and how they solve the problem with hypnosis.
Well, and that's one of the things I really appreciate about your book is there's no cookie-cutter approach to dealing with it. It isn't like, listen to this CD or, here's, just, do these certain things and you're going to get the same results as John over there or Mary over here,
Right, and I think that is a really great point to bring up because I think a lot of people do want the magic pill. They want the silver bullet. They want just help me feel better now. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it, But the reality is it is going to be different for every person. And when people recognize that and are able to read a book like that and then apply some of the techniques to themselves in a way that makes sense, then they'll start to see results. Once you start to see results, what happens is now resistance is down and people get relief. Once they get even just a little bit of relief, like, oh my gosh, I lost a pound this week and it didn't even feel like I had to try, like it was so easy. So once they get a little bit of relief, now they're like, oh my gosh, it can be this easy. And so then they're open to even making other changes.
Yeah, just seeing how easily it flows. Now, I know that you also talk about there are certain things, to focus on like sleep and even mindfulness, in some capacity,
Right. Yeah. There are some foundations. We have a human body, right? So we have to, really good self-care is definitely a part of this. So you don't have to have perfect self-care. I mean, I think everybody could agree if we all were millionaires, and, we could go to the gym or go be active for 2 hours every day, and we had a private chef who would make us the perfect food, it would be a lot easier, right? And maybe, on top of that, we got to spend an hour doing something creative and, a hobby or something like that, that things would be easier. But it's just not realistic. Some of the foundations for that really help people here, really good sleep. So if I see, there's two things really good sleep and lowering stress. So if without really good sleep, people are waking up without enough energy to be effective during that day. So then what happens? They start to get tired 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, but they feel like they shouldn't be tired because they're trying to work. So what are they going to reach for? They're probably going to reach for something sugary, right?
Any kind of stimulant, coffee, sugar,
Yep, and maybe a combo, right? Maybe they're doing coffee with sugar in it or something like that. And then that just kind of starts a downward spiral for them. So good sleep is important, and it's something that I look for with my clients. If they're not sleeping well, we have to address that problem in addition. Because if we don't, it's going to be harder for them to be successful, let's put it that way. And when they are sleeping well, and this is usually a result of us working together, they wake up with energy in the morning, and now they have a positive outlook for the day. They have time to maybe do a 10-minute stretch of yoga or something in the morning. They're maybe reading a devotional in the morning, or reading something inspirational, or listening to an inspirational podcast. Or they have time to kind of boot up with some really positive stuff, and then maybe they have time to make a healthy breakfast or healthy lunch, something simple, right? We don't have to eat perfectly to lose weight. We really don't. And it's kind of a balance between what you can do and then something healthy. But the other thing is stress. So if there's too much stress, and this is where I see too much stress. It's very common. A lot of my clients, they want to make sure everybody else is happy. Does that sound familiar? Have you ever heard of that one?
I have heard of that for sure.
Yeah. So, a lot of moms, a lot of women in particular, they want to make sure everybody in the room is happy. They want to make sure their kids are happy, spouse is happy, parents, everybody needs to be happy, and then they can be happy. Well, guess what? That is so much work. And it almost never happens. It's impossible to please everybody. So that's another kind of issue where people are trying to make sure everybody is happy. They stress themselves out. You can't make anybody happy, first of all. And so then because they're so stressed, now they're eating to compensate that. So that's another issue that we work on.
Well, and I know you talk about how it's possible to change that default response to stress. So that, then there's this new response. And a lot of times, I think when we talk about this stuff, people think, gosh, that's going to be really hard. How am I going to do that?
Yeah, and you know what? They're right, because they're not going about it appropriately. So usually what happens is when we have a default response to stress, well, guess what? We're stressed, right? We're stressed, right? And then we do this thing. So the worst time to try and come up with a default response is when you're stressed. You have to think of it ahead of time. And so that's really one of the keys. You have to think of it ahead of time. When you have, so if you think about it energetically, it's kind of like, well, when you're stressed, you're not really feeling well. Like you don't usually have tons of energy. You usually are feeling kind of low, or you're just like defeated or frustrated or something. When you're feeling better, that's when, you kind of have access to your creative resources. So this is what I do with my clients. Like what would you like to do? When you were stressed. I'm asking them when they're not stressed, what would you like to do? Oh, well, I'd like to go on a walk. I'd like to listen to music. I'd like to take my dog for a walk. I'd like to go listen to music online. I joke with my clients all the time about watching baby donkey videos on YouTube, and it just makes everybody laugh to think about something truly enjoyable, right? And so when you plan it ahead of time, is the number one step. Number two is it has to be equal to some degree of the food. So I'll give you an example. I had a client once who said, well, next time I'm stressed, I'm going to clean my house. And I said, okay, how does that make you feel? Is that, because some people really like cleaning, so I had to check. And she said, well, I said, she said, well, I like it when it's done. And I said, well, do you enjoy doing it? She said, no. And I said, so honest to goodness, are you going to really want to clean your house when you're stressed? She said, no. All right. So that's the other thing. With your default response, it has to be something that you enjoy. And it could be something simple. You know, the last piece is that it has to be easy to do. So I had another client who said, well, when I'm stressed, I want to go skiing. I said, okay, well, that's great, but you know, it wasn't even ski season here in Bellingham, or the mountain is like an hour away. So how easy is it going to be for you to hop in your car, drive up to the mountain, and go skiing when you're stressed? And she said, well, not all that easy. So the default response has to be easy. You have to think of it ahead of time. It has to be something that's enjoyable, and it has to be really easy to do, something that you can do anywhere. Once those three things are done, then in the moment when you feel stressed, you do it whether you feel like it or not. And this is where the hypnosis really shines, because you can do this in hypnosis with people, and now they already have an expectation of success. So the next time they feel stressed, they just go on the walk. They don't think about it, because the reality is when we're feeling stressed like that, we don't always feel like doing what's good for us.
Yeah, we're too focused then on what's happening. You know, it's like, oh, I'm sucked into this stress column, you know?
Yep, and we get focused on that negativity. You're right. And so what happens is if you just go on the walk, so you just like, okay, I promised Erika I'm going to just go on the walk the next time I felt like this. Guess what happens like 2 minutes into the walk?
They start thinking about their stress.
They start, and so they're out there on their walk, and they're thinking about things, but they're also starting to feel better. And so sometimes we just have, you know, there's two ways that we do things. One way we do things because we feel like it, and that's pretty easy. You know, you feel like hanging out with your friends, you feel like going shopping, you feel like that type of thing, you feel it. The other way that we do things is because we know it's the right thing for us. And that is, for a lot of people, going to work, right? Like, I don't feel like going to work, but I'm going to because I know I need to. So, you know, the default response can kind of be the same thing. It's like, I'm going to go on the walk, I'm going to listen to the music, or I'm going to go sit in the hot tub. I don't feel like it, but I'm going to do it because I know it's the right thing for me. Usually within a couple minutes of doing it, the mood, the feeling shifts, and it makes all the difference, because guess what happens? You get to repattern the brain. Now you're teaching the brain, stress, walk. Stress, walk, stress, walk. Pretty soon the cupcakes are out of the brain. You know, cupcakes and stress aren't connected anymore, and you'll be sitting there feeling stressed, and you'll be like, I need to go on a walk. And that's really magical. When people realize that happens, they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't think about having the cupcake or the donut in the break room. I actually thought I need to take a walk. And this is what the brain is telling you. The brain is saying, I need to take a break. That's exactly what the brain is doing. It doesn't even want that food. It just wants a break from what you were doing. So when you come up with that default response and you just follow through on it, whether you feel like it or not, make that commitment to do it for a week, it can change things for you in a very dramatic and systematic way. So you can change how your brain is wired so that it will actually give you the idea for walking the next time you feel stressed.
Well, and I'm sure just like any athlete or anyone that wants to be good at what it is that they're doing, it comes with some practice. So if they get out there and they are thinking about work and or whatever their stress is, it's just the fact that they have to kind of immerse themselves into that mindfulness as they're on their path, kind of let that go, you know, really practice on letting that go.
Right. And there's a couple really, you know, interesting things that you can do. So one thing that you can do for mindfulness, like let's say you go outside and you're still thinking about the thing that's bothering you. One of the things that you do is you just look around for something new or different. Now this is what they say keeps kids so kind of active and alive. All they do is they look for what's new and different. So go outside and on your walk, look for something new and different. Your neighbor is going to have a new something in their yard, right? Or a new car or something. So this is it's kind of like that. Do you remember playing that game when you were little, like two pictures and one of the pictures had something different in it than the other picture? Yeah. Did you like that game?
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, so it's like that for your brain. And so you can kind of play that, the novelty of new or different lights up the part of the brain that responds to pleasure. So it really releases neurochemicals, it releases dopamine in the brain, so it's kind of a fun game to play. So if you ever catch yourself still stressed, even though you're out on a walk or trying to do something else, look around for what's new or different. Your brain will get excited. It will be happy for your brain, and then you'll stop thinking about the stressful thing.
I think that's great advice because, so many people are so caught up in their stress and in their lives and what's going on. And we're in such an age of, kind of instant gratification in many ways where we're so overly connected, and so disconnected in others that it would be just perfect advice to be able to kind of refocus and recenter yourself so that you can, make these shifts, and it doesn't have to be a hard thing.
No, it doesn't have to be a hard thing. As a matter of fact, in my job, I'm just super interested in the way that the brain works. So I could sit down and find all of these super things that things that I find really super interesting. But what I find is my clients get really curious about the way their brain is working. So once I point out some of these things, they're like, "You're right, Erika. I wasn't thinking about this nearly as much. And you're right. Once I was outside for 2 minutes, it shifted." And now they're curious about the power that they have in their own mind. They're not so focused on the negative, and by the negative I mean the problem. They're not focused on the stress. They're not focused on the air. Now they're curious, and the curiosity shifts how they see and think about things. The curiosity, it too will release the dopamine into the brain, and so now they're getting the neurochemicals that feel good in the body. And so the curiosity goes a long way to helping people make changes because they're like, wow, that's really cool that my brain did that. And that's really amazing that my brain did that. I wonder what else it could do. So people get excited and curious about the way their brain works. And once that happens, now they're going to be off and running because they're like, oh my gosh, I wonder if this happens. I wonder what happens here. I had a story. There's a story in the book of a client who she went to the grocery store. She got all the way home, and it wasn't until she got home she started unpacking her groceries. She realized she did not go down the cookie or chip aisle. That was such a cool experience for her. It wasn't that she went to the store, saw the cookie or chip aisle, and thought, oh my gosh, I can't do it. No, because she didn't even think about it. And once she got all the way home, she was just really impressed with the way that her brain was able to change so quickly. Like, wow, of course I could lose weight if I didn't see or think about the chips anymore. That's just going to make it so much easier, right? And so when people are curious about how the brain works and then are noticing the changes, the immediate changes in the brain, now they're starting to understand how those immediate smaller changes can add up over time to really big, significant changes in their ability to make habitual and behavioral changes in their life.
And it's interesting because science is always saying, or I've heard them say, different science reports will say it takes 30 days to form a new habit, or 15 days to do this. There's some discrepancy as far as that goes. And it sounds like these are little. You basically can plant your flag in the hill, like one hill at a time.
Right.
Today you can go down the chip aisle, and tomorrow I wonder what that's going to be.
Right. Yeah, and that's a really good point because we really don't know, but I can say as far as neuroscience goes and the way that we have memory and the way that neural pathways are created in the brain, I don't think it's ever going to be one timeline for every person because there's a lot of things that go into it. So there's an emotional state that goes into it. There's novelty that goes into our ability to change habits. So I don't think it's ever going to be, 7 days for everybody. It's going to be just like everything is for everyone. It's like if you start a new you start a training program for running. Well, some people are going to go and bust a 7-minute mile, and others are going to be at 14-minute miles. But everyone can finish the marathon if they're doing their 4-month training. It's just going to be different rates for different people. So, yeah, I think the consistency is the important part when it comes to changing a habit. So it has to be every single time you're doing it this new way.
And moving forward. And, I think for a lot of people that have heard, it takes X amount of time to develop new habits or what have you. I mean, it's probably really encouraging and offers a lot of hope for them to hear. It's like, no, I can go at my own pace, and it's going to be what it's going to be.
Absolutely. And the other thing is with things like that, and I'll take it one step further, when you're standing in the aisle at the grocery store and you see, Susie or Mary who, hey, I lost 30 pounds in a month. Well, that's really discouraging for people because guess what happens if they don't lose the 30 pounds in a month and they feel like there's something wrong with them. And so, those types of numbers, they can be, they can be encouraging, but at the same time, it is going to be different for everybody. And long-term weight loss really happens at a rate of like 0.5 pound to 2 pounds a week. And when you lose weight at that rate, it's much more likely that you're able to keep it off for life.
That is what people want to hear.
Yeah, because we don't want to do this forever, right? We don't want to be struggling with weight forever.
And most importantly, the root cause that's causing the weight as well. We could kiss that goodbye.
Oh my gosh, and that's really where the true healing comes in, because not only are people losing weight, but then they feel better about themselves. They're reconnected to the things that bring them true joy and happiness in their life. So people are painting and singing and dancing again, and they're like, oh my gosh, I feel alive again. And then, on the side, they're losing weight every single week. So yeah, it's amazing.
Sounds like a win-win.
Yeah, it is.
Well, Erika, where can people, I'm part of your community, but where can people, like our listeners, go and be part of your community and follow what you're doing as well?
Well, they can find my book, ReprogramYourWeight.com, so they can find me there, and they can follow me online at Cascade Hypnosis Center. .com. They could also follow me on Facebook. That's facebook.com, / Cascade Hypnosis Center. So there's a lot of ways to connect with me, and I just like to help inspire and educate people as much as I can and help as many people as I can with an inspirational and I think a new approach to weight loss that is much more doable for most people.
Oh, it really is. And then also, I know that you do schedule in-person sessions. Do you do sessions via Skype as well, or not yet?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I usually do them over a different technology called Zoom, but yeah, I do. I do remote sessions with people, and as a matter of fact, if it's okay with you, if people wanted to email me, I would be happy to give them a free copy of my book. So that's Erika, ERIKA, at CascadeHypnosisCenter.com. So just send me an email and say that you heard me on Marianne's show, and I'll send you a free copy of the book. And I do free consultations with people every day to talk with them about how hypnosis can help them, and they can self-schedule that online.
That is really cool. I know I'm going to be scheduling at the time with you because you do hypnosis. You have a consultation that you do, and I've been checking that out. So I'll be contacting you for that personally. Erika, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marianne. It's been great. I just love talking about this, and thank you for having me on.
Thank you. We are going to pause here for a quick break, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit JudyGoodman.com. That's JudyGoodman.com.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 1-2-3 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
This is Jennifer McGill. My highly anticipated new album, Unbreakable, is now available at jennifermcgill.com. Everything from power ballads to high-energy jam-out-in-your-car songs. I used my highest joys and deepest pains to create empowering songs of love, strength, healing, and restoration so that you can be unbreakable too. Get your copy of Unbreakable today from jennifermcgill.com. Because who doesn't want to be unbreakable?
Do you know that you can become a genius at any age? Do you know that you can change your life and create a brilliant life for yourself? Hi, I am Olympia LaPointe, an award-winning rocket scientist who you more than likely have seen on TED Talks, Impact Theory, and PBS. Check out my latest book, Answers Unleashed, The Science of Unleashing Your Brain's Power. Simply go to answersunleashed.com books and check it out for yourself. You'll find the tools to help you create the life you've always wanted.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. I am so delighted to be introducing our next guest, Anna Homayoun, and she's here today to talk to us about her new book, Social Media Wellness. Now, Anna is a noted teen and millennial expert, author, speaker, and educator whose books are helping tweens and teens survive the digital age. She's the founder of Green Ivy Educational Consultants, a Silicon Valley-based educational consulting firm, and her work has been featured in New York Times, USA Today, Chicago Tribune, San Francisco Chronicle, among many other publications and media outlets. So let's welcome to the show, Anna.
Thank you so much for having me.
What a joy it is to have you here, and there's so many people that need this kind of insight.
Yes, well, I really have seen, traveling around the country, I'm about 10 cities into my book tour, and meeting parents and students around the country and finding out, we're all dealing with a lot of the same issues. And that's part of what I talk about, right, in the book, is that there's this new language of social media socialization that adults don't fully understand because they're experiencing it for the first time themselves.
So, I have to ask you, what even inspired you on this path?
Well, yeah, so I started working with teens on organization and time management in the heart of the Silicon Valley in 2001. And back then, when students would come into my office and they would say, I would ask them what their biggest distractions would be, they would say, their pets, their siblings, food, and daydreaming. And about a decade ago, I realized that those distractions were shifting, and many times their distractions were coming from online sources. And then more and more, we were bringing technology into the classroom over the last 5 years. So my first two books were around executive functioning and the culture of perfectionism. And then this book really came out of this idea that we don't know the language that kids are speaking today with social media, and for many of them, they're facing this ultimate paradox that the device they need to use in order to complete their work is also their biggest distraction from getting that work done. So we really needed practical tools to understand this new world so we can be helpful as adults, as parents and educators in helping kids navigate this world online and in real life.
Well, and we were kind of talking a little bit earlier here, and even though your book is geared towards tweens and teens and students, it's very relevant for adults as well.
Absolutely. So the book was written for parents and educators to understand the lives of teenagers, but more and more parents and educators will tell me that they read it for, to get a sense of what kids are dealing with, but they see themselves in the book, and it becomes kind of uncomfortable because we recognize some of the habits or the issues that we deal with that sort of creep up on us, right? On average, a person picks up their iPhone about 80 times a day, so that's 30,000 times a year. And what does that mean for how that's impacting the way we think and interact and process information?
Well, and I was so just shocked by the stats that you had that students spend about 9 hours a day on social media.
Yeah, they spend about 9 hours per day on some form of media, and that does not include time they spend on doing homework. And because so much of it's like what we call mixed media, so they might be listening to music while reading something online, they actually pack far more time in that 9 hours of some form of media. And that just adds up in terms of the kind of messaging they're receiving, the things they don't even think about sort of subliminally that come through as they're interacting with the world.
I know there's a big group of young adults right now. They're going through depression and they're not really able to cope with what's going on socially. It's because they're so tied into the social media aspect of it. Do you look at how parents are addressing that as well and how they can have conversations with their children in regards to how to have proper use of social media?
Absolutely. So the book really does a couple of things. It lays the framework of the new sort of social media landscape for parents in the first 3 chapters. And the reason it does that is because a lot of times parents will say, I don't even know where to start. So I was visiting schools in Seattle last week, and I would ask the kids, how many of you, do your parents know what you're doing on social media? And about 80% of them said their parents had no idea. So that first few chapters provides the landscape. But the back end of the book really uses this framework of the 3 S's that I developed called healthy socialization, effective self-regulation, and overall safety as a way for parents and educators to start this conversation around social media, to move it from this sort of fear and anger and anxiety conversation, like don't do this online or you won't get into college or you won't get a job, rather to a conversation that comes from compassion, empathy, and understanding of, hey, this is hard for all of us, and we've got to navigate this world in a way that keeps you healthy, safe, and regulating in a way that's productive for you, right? When I go to schools, I often ask kids, how many of you would like more free time? And they all raise their hand because we all feel so busy today, but we don't sort of identify that those daily little habits, the minute checking the phone here, going online here, adds up to a whole lot of time that, takes us away from what we enjoy doing.
Now, is that some of the common mistakes that you see parents doing is when they're addressing social media with their children, they're being a little bit more harsh as opposed to, addressing it like how you did? I mean, that's so much of an easier conversation.
Exactly. I think a lot of people just, the fear ties into frustration, and a lot of the fear comes from they don't know how to use any of the apps that their kids are using. They don't even know what it looks like. And I often ask, parents, how many of you have a Snapchat streak or have made a Musical.ly video? And their kids are using these apps 19, 20 times a day, some of them, are opening them up. And yet these parents don't know how they work. And so my first step is really, become the student, become the person learning, and learn how any of the apps that your kids are on, how they fully work. They're not all good or bad. They're just simply a new form of communication that we need to understand. And that's where the conversation shifts, because I'll have kids come into my office and they just want to talk. They just want to explain to someone what they're dealing with online. And a lot of times they need to know that the adult has some form of clue or is good at asking open-ended questions without expectation or judgment so that they can really just talk through things. Because a lot of times kids will come in and they'll talk through things with me, and then they'll say, I'm not going to use that app anymore. I just don't think it's working for me. And they come up with it, right? My work is all about helping them build intrinsic motivation and critical thinking skills, because we're not going to be watching them 24/7. We're hoping that they become adults that make good decisions, right? And so this book is all about helping parents understand how to do that at home and helping educators understand how to do that in the classroom.
Yeah, and that kind of brings to topic, like I was thinking of this quote that you had in your book, and I really appreciate it. It's the best way to support teens in the process of self-discovery is to ask open-ended questions without judgment. And so that way they feel like they're actually having a conversation without, being grilled.
Well, a lot of times if you shut kids down early, they stop thinking critically, and they just tell you what they think you want to hear. But what often happens is they then go underground, or they don't fully explain some of the issues that they're facing. And that is a problem, right? We really want kids to feel open, to feel like they have adults and other peers that they can turn to if something doesn't go as planned online, or if something happens that makes them feel nervous or unprepared. And a lot of the fear conversations or the anger conversations just leads kids to go underground online, which to me is far more dangerous.
Well, what are some conversations that parents can have with their kids to encourage them to have healthy online and in real life experiences?
Well, one of the things I always start with is helping kids identify that they have a choice in how they spend their time online, right? And in real life. Like a lot of times, because kids are in this developmental phase where they really care what other people think about them, and they really want to know if they're liked, they will, have this fear of missing out. So they feel like they have to be online all the time. We know that 94% of kids go online every day, and that doesn't surprise any of us. But a fourth of teens really feel like they're online all the time. So they're answering their phone within 5 minutes of waking up. And they never feel like they have this option to be off. The part of the conversation is, hey, is this working for you? Is this energizing or is this draining? Because there certainly are positive experiences online, right? There are kids who find a sense of community online. They can find access to resources that they might not have otherwise. So there are definitely positive things. But what we have to help kids understand is that their online and in real life experiences are more intertwined than we've led them to believe, right? Mm-hmm. Something happens online that feels uncomfortable, it affects how you interact in your daily life, right? If you, as a person, get like kind of a nasty email from somebody, right, or someone sends you a mean message, it kind of sucks you into your day. And so we have to help kids understand that they also have a choice in how they engage, and that they have a choice to disengage online. And when kids hear that, it's actually kind of relieving because they don't fully understand that otherwise.
I think parents expect, because they're so, they pick up phones and it's easy for them to navigate around and figure out what to do. And so parents expect for them to have that understanding when they really don't.
Absolutely. And to understand that developmentally, for middle school and high school students, their social lives is the overriding and overarching issue in their life, right? And you ask adults about what they remember about middle school or high school. It might be a class or it might be a specific subject, but more often it's tied to a social interaction of some sort. This is why it's so important for us to understand social media wellness.
Mm-hmm. Now, in your book, you talk about, and you touched on it just a little bit ago, about what's draining and what's energizing. So when you're having that discussion, what is the outcome that we're looking for? We're trying to get the tween or teen to really kind of understand how much their social media use is impacting them?
Well, we're trying to help them understand, for example, that they have a choice in how they spend their time, and if something's not serving them, right, if it feels exhausting, if it feels toxic, if it feels draining, that they can opt out. And so the first story in my book is of a student that I had visited her middle school, and I had spoken to them, and then a week later I had returned to speak to the parents. And as I was walking through the hall, she stopped me and she said, "Oh my gosh, you're the lady who gave that speech last week. It was so helpful." And I said, "Oh, what was so helpful about it?" And she said, "Well, before that, all last year I was in the 6th grade and I was on this anonymous app where people could write in anonymously comments about you or questions. And it was really getting me down. And I was in my room. I thought I was doing my parents thought I was doing my homework, but really I was on this app." She said, "But after your presentation, I realized I have a choice in how I spend my time. And I went home and I decided to delete the app." Now, I hadn't told her to do that. Mm-hmm. I hadn't said, you need to get offline or you'll get in trouble. Or I just simply said, you have a choice in how you spend your time. Recognize that. And if something's not serving you, how do you want to change that? And then that's what she decided to do. And again, it ties into this idea of building intrinsic motivation, helping kids understand they have choices, and they have more power than they think they do around social media, whether to engage and disengage. And the other idea is that we can filter in experiences and we can filter out, right? On Twitter, you can hit a mute button so you don't hear what people respond to you, right? Reply to you.
Oh, yeah. Or block if you need to.
Or block. And block and report, you bring up a great point. we often tell kids block and report are tools in their, if something doesn't feel comfortable. And a lot of times kids will say, oh, I would never want to block or report somebody. But they don't fully understand that safety is the priority, and that it's not hurting somebody's feelings if there's something inappropriate going on.
So is that some of the safety tips that you give to parents? Because I know some platforms, social media platforms, will allow you to block and report where others aren't as good,
Well, I think more and more apps are becoming really good about having features. Like, for example, Instagram, you can turn off the comments now. And there's all these features on multiple different apps that kids are using a lot. Because many of the, social media sites, their intention is to also keep kids safe, because it doesn't benefit them to be known as the app that's not safe for kids, right?
No.
So a lot of the things that they're coming out with are in some ways are a reaction to things that have already happened, but they often didn't fully know sort of the scope of what the problem was until some issues came up, right? Now some of the newer apps may know more and more. But still, it's really important for parents to keep alert. Like, that's the number one thing that I would say, because new apps are popping up every week. What's popular in one grade level might not be used in another. And the best way parents can start that conversation, or even teachers, is really ask kids what their friends are using, right? Because kids are less likely to incriminate themselves, per se, but they're much more likely to say, hey, my friends are on this one, and it seems weird to me, Mom, because X, Y, or Z. And even if you as a mom or a dad aren't the person that will have the conversation with, your job as a parent is to make sure that they have somebody they can have that conversation with, that they're trusted and is a good resource for them as an adult.
Yeah, I have a friend a few years back. His daughter had an app on her phone that would block, like a certain app or the apps on the screen. And so it took him forever to figure out what she had on there. So it's interesting. I mean, parents have to be really involved. It's like you have to really know what's on their phone.
Well, and I think it's the conversation that if you have younger children, you have far more power before you hand over the phone, right? Yeah. So you set the expectations early with the opportunity to change them at any time. And that's really key. Because a lot of times what we find is parents will come to me and they're like, my kid is in the 9th grade, they already feel addicted, it's a fight to get the phone out of the room at night, out of their bedroom at night. And I'm like, but some things are just like a standard, because you pay for the phone, you have full, it's your liability if something happens on that phone. So there are certain standards that you have to put in place. And it becomes harder to put new standards in place than to start with a structure in place.
Well, and I know in your book you also talk about boundaries, which I thought was fabulous, because a lot of times people forget about that. And you discuss social boundaries and emotional boundaries.
Absolutely, because what we don't sort of fully realize is that having a phone often gives people 24/7 access to us. So just as you wouldn't send your kid downtown in the middle of the night every night at 4 a.m., you probably don't want them to have people to have access to them like that. And what we know is, when kids have their phone in their room at night, and a lot of times kids will tell me, I use it for my cell phone, or I use it for my alarm. I use it for my alarm to get up in the morning. And what ends up happening is, if they get a notification in the middle of the night, they always tell me that they wake up to answer it, right? So it affects their sleep quality. But more than that, we also have to be aware that our kids are getting the same intense phone notifications that we are in terms of news notifications. We have to think about that, right? There's a lot of anxiety right now in our world, and if we want to make sure that our kids just have a sense of safety and have a sense of that they have the ability to be off, we need to create the structure for them, because oftentimes, in terms of brain development, they're not able to create that structure for themselves, because self-regulation in many ways seems near impossible.
Yeah. Now, is that like the number one thing that parents come to you for, is how to set up appropriate boundaries in going forward with your children on social media?
Well, parents and students often come to me, and I visit schools around the country, talking about executive functioning, time management, personal purpose, and overall wellness. And so the book really came out of the fact that my first two books were around executive functioning and then the culture of perfectionism. And I realized we needed to have this conversation around the lens of social media. And because my office is located in the heart of the Silicon Valley, I'm just a few miles away from Facebook, Apple, and Google campuses, I have a unique lens because I work with kids. I grew up in the Silicon Valley. It's a part of the fabric of my life in terms of understanding it. So I heard about Snapchat far earlier than most parents. And so those are the kind of things that make my experience a little bit unique and my frame of reference unique, where I can say, this isn't bad or good. There are a lot of benefits, and there are a lot of new opportunities and challenges that parents have to be aware of. But here's a framework that works, that can help your kids make better choices and make them feel better and help them kind of create a framework that works for them.
So overall, when you're working with teens and tweens, what are some of the challenges that they're bringing to you? I know we've gone over quite a few already, but what are some of the ones that you kind of see repetitively?
Well, one of them is this idea that everything gets amplified, right? So they'll go to a dance and they'll say, it was a great dance, I had a wonderful time. They'll come home, they'll go up to their room, and then they'll go on Instagram and see photos of the post party that they weren't invited to, right? And suddenly the greatest night ever turns into the worst night ever because they weren't included, or some of the social manipulations that go on. Like one of the examples that I see more and more that a lot of times people don't really realize is that likes, loves, followers, and comments have become the new barometers of popularity for so many kids and adults. And because of that, it sort of changes how they see the world and how they interact with the world, right? I have kids who tell me, you go through the entire day trying to think, okay, would that make a good snap? Like a message sent over Snapchat, rather than just experiencing your day. Or, let's stop and take a photo of everything that we're experiencing to capture it, rather than just experiencing it, right? Yeah. And so it changes the way they interact and how they see themselves, because if something they post doesn't get a lot of likes or loves or comments, it almost deems it as unworthy. And so how does that change our framework of understanding about ourselves and our world around us? That's one of the biggest things that kids are dealing with, but also adults don't necessarily have the answer for, because they're struggling with it themselves.
Yeah, so how can they provide support for a kid who's going through that, going, well, I didn't get as many likes for this, and then feeling like they're not as popular or not as well liked. And then that builds into like self-esteem problems.
Exactly. And a lot of the other pieces that we have to think about are, as parents, what are we sharing of our kids, right? Because I had one of the schools that I visited, a mom asked me, well, I really want to put photos of my 10-year-old daughter online, but she doesn't want them, but I think she would really benefit from the positive comments that our family members would say if they saw a photo of her, but she's really, she struggles with self-esteem and self-image. And I said, well, here's the thing. We also have to think about consent, and consent doesn't happen just when they're teenagers. Like, we have to listen to what our kids say about what we post about them. And we also have to understand that our kids' self-esteem and self-worth shouldn't just come from the validation of others, right? That's part of what we're trying to convince and convince kids of, so we really need to be aware of the messages that we're sending in our daily interactions.
Yes, and if you have parents that are saying, hey, we're going to put this online and see how many people like it, then it's just feeding kind of the dragon in some ways, because, we want them to be able to think for themselves and go, hey, I'm the only one that should care about what I think and feel, Yep.
So that makes, that makes it complicated, right? You know, and I said to the mom, I said, you know what? I know that you're coming from a place of love, but that's what makes things a little bit more challenging these days. But we have to let kids know, particularly girls, that their consent matters from an early age.
That's so important because no matter, you know, and then they grow up knowing that their opinion matters.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
So, do you know, what are some, I know you work with schools also. Do you have schools that bring you in to just talk about certain topics, or is there a main theme that you're seeing over and over again as well?
Oh, absolutely. So I travel to schools all around the country. I'm in probably 20 different cities this school year already, talking about, well, this book particularly, but I talk about my second book, The Myth of the Perfect Girl and the Culture of Perfectionism, and then a lot about organization and time management as it relates to social media and as it relates to daily pressures. So many of our kids feel as though they're so overscheduled and overwhelmed. And so the framework that I give a lot is, how do you as a middle school student or a high school student build your own blueprint, just figure out success on your own terms, rather than what I call borrow it from somebody else's. So copy other people or think that because other people are doing something that you should be. So usually when I visit schools, I'll visit with the students and I'll give a talk, and then I'll visit with the parents, and then I'll do faculty work. And I visit a lot of schools that have one-to-one computer or tablet programs where each student gets their own computer or tablet, because we find that, you know, when we give them these devices, if we don't give them the framework and the guidance on how to make good choices, they can quickly become overwhelmed, right? There's so many options to be online all the time, and it feels like they can never be off. So how do we give them sort of the tools to make good choices and to build in their time? And you know, often what will happen is I'll visit with the kids during the day, and at least one parent will come up to me in the evening and say, my kid told me I had to come and hear you speak because this made sense. And to me, that's the biggest compliment, right? Because kids are not complimentary unless they got something out of it. And then we see that they're like downloading some of the tools that I told them or I mentioned to them, and they're really putting it in practice, which to me is the conversations we need to be having, right? We need to be giving kids these tools to make better decisions because they're hungry for them.
Yeah. And they want their parents to understand what's going on as well. That's why they're asking them to come to you.
Exactly. They want parents to speak the language, because even if they say to me or say to their parents, you know, I don't want you to know what I'm doing. And I always say to parents, I say, everything's infinitely less cool once you're on it. But they do want you to know. They really do, because I've had kids sit in my office and explain an app to me and explain how it made them feel uncomfortable and just need somebody to listen to them. And then by the end, they're like, I'm just going to get off the app. It's not worth it to me. But I didn't tell them to do that. They needed to work it out for themselves. And if I had probably told them to get off the app, they wouldn't have done it because they're teenagers. Yeah. So it's all about helping with those critical thinking skills and that intrinsic motivation in a positive, hey, you're in control of this. You've got options kind of way.
Yeah, it's something to make you feel uncomfortable. What do you want to do? And then letting them come up with the decision.
And solutions, right? It's all about finding positive solutions in an environment where we have to address the fact that we're all in this together, right? And another important point, and I always say this when I visit with parents, is we've got to stop shaming other parents when something happens online that's not appropriate. Let's say a girl or a boy posts something that's not appropriate. And a lot of times parents will rush and say, well, that kid, I can't believe him. Who are his parents, right? But kids are making mistakes, and we're all in this, you know, it takes a village to raise a child, and it takes an online world, village to make sure kids are safe. So I often encourage parents, if you see something that another kid posted that would make you feel uncomfortable, or you would want to know if it was your kid, you know, create this community among other parents that you can reach out, right? So we don't create this environment of shameful, you know, parenting in that way. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes perfect sense. And everyone's at a different level of techiness.
Yes.
You know, either they're really tech savvy or they're not. And so it helps to have a community they can go to going, hey, does anyone know something about this? You know, or I think it provides just greater opportunity for the parents to have a better understanding.
Absolutely. And again, that idea of open-ended questions without judgment or shame goes for parents too, and parental conversations, right? We're all in it together, and we want to keep our kids safe and make them happy and healthy and grow up to be well-adjusted. And so we're in this navigation together. Yeah. And that's really why I wrote the book, is like, how do we give parents and educators the tools in a way that they can effectively talk to kids, and the way that they can, maximize safety and healthy socialization.
Well, and we've got the holidays just right around the corner, so this is a perfect book to give as a gift to, like, I know a couple of my girlfriends. I'm going to be buying this book and giving it to them as a gift because they don't know what to do. They have no clue. Like, where do we turn? How do we get answers? So, it's so nice to have something like this come along and have this great information.
Thank you so much. And yes, we created also, for anyone who purchases the book, we created a free e-workbook that they can go to the website at socialmediawellnessbook.com and just enter their information, and they can get a parent, educator, or student workbook, because we really want the parents and educators to implement and take it the next step and have the conversations and make it work for them. So it's really important to us to change the conversation. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. And Anna, where can people go to be part of your community and learn more about your book?
Sure. Well, online, the book is at socialmediawellnessbook.com, and that's also my website, Homayoun.com. And they can also go on Facebook or Twitter and search for me, and I have an author page where I post articles, and on Twitter I share, important, relevant information around the book. So both places are great. Thank you.
Well, I'm sure with everything that comes out, you're right on top of all of it, and you provide such great information that they can go to that and kind of stay on top of what's happening. Because, you're right, we're all in this together. There's a lot of stuff out there I don't know about.
Right. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for helping explain, this important topic.
Oh, thank you, Anna. And it's been such a joy to have you on the show today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, that's the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.